So today what we're going to be doing is replacing the two input jacks on my Fender Hot Rod 212 Deville. Before I get started with this thing, I want to be very clear. I am not a professional, and because of that and the fact that I've never put a soldering iron up to an amplifier in my life, will not be videoing the soldering and desoldering procedures. And that's because this is a learning process for me today too, and I don't want to be worried about how the film's going to come out more than how the soldering is going to come out. It's my only amplifier, and I don't have time to bring it to anyone because I got a gig tomorrow and I got to get these two input jacks replaced. They're both physically broken. They broke, and the soldering joints came loose. So what I'm going to do is mostly just sort of have the experience on camera. It's going to be cut in and out. I also don't have any way of holding my camera like a stand or anything like that. So if you're a professional, you're going to hear me say a lot of dumb stuff, ask a lot of stupid questions to myself. You're probably going to watch me do terrible, horrible things that you would never dream of doing. Just, you know, I am experienced with disassembling and reassembling most electronics, but I don't want to mess up my amp trying to get a good angle and, you know, good lighting conditions to show you how to desolder something. There's tons of videos on how to do that, or take it to somebody that knows what they're doing. This is more about just having fun working on your own tube amp and enjoying the benefits of a tube amp and the opportunities to learn. And hope you enjoy. Alright, so today I'm going to be repairing and replacing the input jacks. The first one, the input one on my Hot Rod DeVille. It's a 212 Fender amp, 60 watts. I'm sorry, 180 watts off the power supply, 60 watt output. As you see, it's an old amp. You know, it's been around, it's had its time, and it still works great. It's just, you know, it's time to do some maintenance on it. I do normally take it apart annually and clean it out and make sure everything's good. I've got these rust marks on the chrome faceplate for the dials that I unfortunately have not been able to get rid of, but that's not what we're worried about today. Basically just wanted to kind of make a video sort of documenting how to work on a tube amp. There's a lot of things misunderstood about a tube amp. It's not just a speaker, you know, there's a lot that goes into it, and thought, you know, it might be interesting to shoot a video of some maintenance and some repair work. As you can see, I've already taken some of the dials off. If you're ever going to work on an amp, tube amp or otherwise, that you have to take the dials off to get into the inside of it safely, I recommend get something like that to dump everything in, because you'll lose stuff every time. So I'm gonna go ahead and get the dials off and go ahead and get the back plate off. So with the back plate off, you can see the circuitry of the amplifier is exposed. There's not much to it when you're thinking in terms of circuitry, like a digital amplifier or a solid state amplifier. It's got a little more going on with the circuit boards and the wiring. Well, at least the circuit boards. There might be more wiring going on in a tube amp, but you can see that most of it is just basic components. Any amateur electrician could identify all of these components pretty easily and readily. You do want to be really, really careful here, though. Two reasons. First of all, obviously, you can see these wires that run along the board. Those are just soldered tapped on there. I mean, they can break really, really easily, and then you're gonna find out how good you are at soldering, which, I mean, we're gonna have to do that today anyway. It's just the less the better. The other thing is you can actually damage a component in here not knowing it, and then that can cause damage to other components when you use the amplifier, and then you're shipping it off, and that's always, this is my only amplifier, so I would never want that to happen. Right, so before I really get started on anything else, what I like to do is go ahead and give it a little wipe. These little disinfectant wipes actually work really well. They're not really harmful to the amplifier. I mean, you probably don't want to like saturate anything with them, and I stay away from the components. You'd be surprised just the gunk that would come off of just the top of it, and mostly along the weather guard right here. And it collects a lot of gunk, keeping it from getting in there. But I like to go ahead and give it a little wipe down. And the very next thing that I want to do here before I do anything else is, see, I'm going to end up having to drop this whole unit out, and on the other side of this plate where this board is mounted, this whole thing comes out, and there's two really big and heavy transformers on the other side. So before I do that, I'm going to want to remove the tubes. Now, if you're not familiar with a tube amp, these old vacuum tubes, it's actually got 5 of them. You can see the 2 power tubes there, and then there's 3 of these smaller preamp tubes, and they're glass. And it's kind of like, I don't know, you want to treat it like a really fragile light bulb. You don't really want to touch them too much, because they get hot, and grease on your hands can cause issues, or so I've been told. The other thing is when you drop this thing, it weighs a ton, and it'll shatter those things in no time. If you've never removed a tube from a tube amp, and you have a tube amp, you want to kind of be careful when you do this. But I cleaned my hands just now, so I'm going to go ahead and just use my hands to make it easier for you to see. But what I'm going to do is I'm going to grab a tube here, and I'm going to just rock it left and right gently. Not too far, because there's this little core piece that can snap. When you unsocket it, that black plastic core piece in the middle there's actually, that's part of the vacuum seal. So you break that, and you got a leak in there. And all it is like a valve. It's just it takes voltage A and turns it into voltage B, usually a lot higher, and that's where you get most of your sound from in your tone. I prefer these 6L6 groove tubes. I believe it's Slavic. The Russian tubes are good too, but these guys are pretty trusty, and they last me about 1 year to 2 years if I take pretty good care of it. And what I'm going to do is I'm going to take this and just set this to the side here where it won't be lost or knocked over. Do the same thing with this tube. You just want to take your time, and you want to always, when you take a tube out, check that core piece, make sure it hasn't cracked or broken. I actually just replaced a tube recently because of that. I had a tube go, I thought it was going microphonic, but it was making all kinds of weird sounds that I couldn't troubleshoot easily. I was actually worried about the components of the amplifier itself, but actually what had happened is that black core piece had cracked open, and it had interrupted the vacuum. So I didn't really know that until I pulled the tube out, and this black core piece fell out behind it, and I was like, what in the world does that go to? And I looked at the tube, and sure enough, that thing was gone. And there's a piece of glass from when they blew the tube that sticks up inside there, so it's hollow. And I didn't know that until that happened too. That's kind of, I thought that was interesting. But in any which case, the 212 Deville takes 2 6L6 power tubes and 3 12AX7 preamp signal tubes. Now those pull out a little easier. These don't have a bracket on the bottom, so I try to be a little more careful with those, because bending those pins means generally you're going to break the glass. Let me just set those in there. It is kind of like working on a car, only not as hard. Now that that's out, my next step is going to be to go in and take a look at this guy right here, and I want to see these 2 input jacks. Now, Fender makes some really nice stuff. This is a good amp. It really is, and it's not cheap. I don't recall what the Deville. This is a Deville 1. I know they got a 2 and a 3 out, maybe even a 4. I'm not sure, but this was pretty pricey. I think it was between $800 and $1,200 brand new, and this one was manufactured in 1994. You know, back then they made a lot more rugged stuff than they do now. And of all of the things on this amp that they just really went above and beyond for, to make sure that it could withstand the test of time, they picked the input jacks to go ahead with plastic on. And I think that just frustrates me. That's why I'm having to make this repair. You see the actual ring, the threaded plastic ring broke, and there went this little nut that goes right here, gone. The inset gone. So now there's nothing holding this in place, and that plastic piece, which has 6 little solder joints, is taking all of the force whenever I plug into it and unplug from it. And it's just a matter of time before it comes completely loose. It's having problems. It really is. Like, my sound goes in and out sometimes, and it's just a big old problem. I can't wait to get this fixed. And we're gonna hope I do it right the first time, because I got a gig tomorrow night. So I'm gonna go ahead and drop this and see what I need to do. I'm pretty sure I can already tell I'm gonna have to remove all of these little nuts right here to get all of these to get this out. Once I drop this out, if I can get this out. I don't know if it's one molded piece or not, but because I don't want to have to pull the board out to do this. That would be, I'm worried about these wires right here, and you know, damaging something, and see all the interconnections. So we're going to see what I can do with this. By the way, when you do drop these, you got, I'm actually missing a screw, but you got 2 on the side and 1 on the top on both sides. I suggest either flipping this amp on its face, or having another person with you, or just being prepared for when you undo that last screw. This thing, I don't know what the weight is exactly. Probably without the cabinets, just this metal unit with the 2 transformers, probably close to 40 or 50 pounds. So, and that's no joke. It's heavy. So when you do get that last screw out, this thing fits so snug, it generally doesn't move around too much once you get all but one of the screws out, and you can be backing out that last screw and it's still going to chill for the most part. You might get a little gap on one end, but when that last thread gives, that thing just drops, and it's not pretty. It's really, really heavy. So you want to be real careful when you do that. So we got that out of there. It was really heavy. Just to show you what we're looking at in the box here, the reason they call it a combo amp is because it's got the amplifier and the speakers with the speaker cabinet all in one unit. A lot of people, the reason I wanted to show you this is because a lot of people do all these modifications to amplifiers, which, hey, more power to you. Get an amp that you like, get it close, and if you can find a way to make it even closer, why not, right? So I got the 212 Deville with the 2 Imbrance 12 speakers in it, and it was pretty good, but you know, I'd be playing shows with guys that had like Marshall amps, and things just drowned me out. Like, there's no way I could keep up. So I thought about doing some modifications to it, or having somebody do some modifications to it, but instead somebody suggested to me, well, what they like to do if they have a amplifier that's just, you know, it's got the power and the volume, but it's just not cutting through as much as it could be, to take one of the speakers and replace it with a different speaker. And that's exactly what I did. I took the upper, the left side Imbrance 12 out and replaced it with a, I know it's kind of reflective, but with a Carvin British speaker. And basically, you'd be surprised what that did for the amp. I mean, it made literally all the difference in the world. I mean, the amp is extremely present when played. I don't use the overdrive channel. I wasn't really fond of it, and I understand most people really aren't that fond of the Deville's overdrive channel. That's pretty much all about the clean channel on this one, and I'll use stomp boxes for overdrive. I played on a Fender Telecaster, actually a Swamp Ash, really sturdy, heavy Telecaster. But yeah, that's the speaker cabinet. One of the things about the Deville is, and probably a lot of other amps, I'm not sure, but this red and black wire that comes in, it actually comes in the back here, and it comes through here, and it's got a wire lock to help protect these two little solder tabs. That goes to the reverb coils, and you might want to disconnect those before you try to pull this out, otherwise you'll yank those directly off of there. And they just go into the reverb pot. It sits in the bottom of the amp. It gives it that echoey sound. If you don't know what reverb is, if you ever wondered why it sounds like you're yelling into a set of springs, it's because that's exactly what it's doing. There's springs in here that the sound is ran through, and it gives it that echoey sound to it. And I was actually surprised when I opened this up and found springs, because I was thinking, you know, it sounds like springs. But what I'll do for you though is I'll open it and show you what I mean. So you'll notice it's just a bag with a piece of cardboard to give it sturdiness on the bottom where it sits. And what I'm going to do is just kind of pull the whole thing out at once. And I don't have a camera stand, so I'm going to have to do these little jump to clips like I've been doing. So this is the unit out of the bag sitting on its little cardboard thing, and this is how it sits in the amplifier. You have connections there and there from that red and black wire over there. And what that does is it has on the inside some springs. What this does is this plate, this silver plate here, it actually floats on springs, so it's not touching this copper colored plate. It floats. It hangs down when it's right side up. And these two longer springs that are slack run along the inside of that plate, and that's what the sound input is passed through, and then it goes back out. And it's just a mono. It's extremely simple. I mean, it sounds just like it's run through some springs. I would have never thought it actually ran through springs. But that's all there is to it. Let's see, I think I can still, yep, there's my repair job. I'm terrible at ordering the right parts. I figure there's enough springs in the world I can pull out of something and make use of it, but it did the trick. I'm having another issue with it though. I'm not sure why it doesn't work at the moment, but it hasn't worked for, I don't know, a few weeks, maybe a few months, and it worked after the repair. So I checked the repair. The repair didn't seem to have caused any damage or anything like that, and I'm probably just going to order a whole new reverb kit, pot, whatever you want to call it, and just replace the whole unit, because astoundingly more difficult to make that spring stay than I thought it would be. I mean, a good couple of hours of fooling around with it, and you can see that they give you plenty of options. I don't know if this is going to focus or not. These different sized holes in different places, that's for the springs to lock onto. So you can actually go in and adjust this. I'm not sure what the adjustment would do to it, if you make it hang lower or higher, or make it more loose so it can, the whole unit can move inside the amp, or if you tighten it so it doesn't hardly move at all. I'm sure that could alter the sound, but I just want it to work. So this is the bare bones amplifier out of its box. It looks really, really naked. I already showed you the board layout. This is a better kind of view of the sockets for the power tubes right there. Got a couple of input jacks. The one on the left is what actually plugs the speakers in the box to it. The one on the right is an aux out. So if I want to bypass those, like I play at a place where my two little 12-inch speakers just aren't going to cut it and they got great big house sound, they can actually run me a line and I can plug it directly into there, and it's like replacing those two 12-inch speakers with whatever great big speakers they got. And it just completely either bypasses it. I can plug it in and then unplug this and not have anything coming out of the speakers on my amp, and it's the amplifier itself will push all of the sound through theirs. Or I can usually have them both in, or I can even go inline and in out, where it splits it like a Y split, comes out of here and then goes to a device that splits it into two connections. One goes back to my speakers again, and the other one goes to their speakers. So it's pretty handy little setup. Simple too, which is what I like about the Classic 2 amp. It's complicated, but it's pretty simple at the same time, if that makes any sense. That's the fuse and the plug, and those are the sockets for the preamp 12AX7 tubes. Now those two transformers I told you about that weigh so much just sit on the front of the plate there, and those are what make the magic happen. Everything is powered through those, and that's what makes that little guitar with no electricity going through it produce such an awesomely loud noise. And I wouldn't suggest sticking my hand in there while it was on. That might ruin your day. But what I've figured out here is that this does look like it's a plate, but I don't think I can remove it. What I'm going to have to do is unscrew the circuit board. I don't think I'm going to have to disconnect any wires though. I think I can drop it out, and these ribbons and connections will just allow me to kind of flip it forward so I can access those. I am, however, going to have to unscrew every one of these so that I can drop it. That's going to be not so bad, not as bad as I thought it'd be. So I'm going to go ahead and get that done and then show you how that goes. So that was actually kind of tricky, but I got it out. I only had to disconnect one wire. The rest of them I were able to work around. Not a lot of room in there, but now we can see exactly what we're looking for here, which is this little guy. Now, I'm trying to really be careful here. I don't want to break off anything really. Everything on a tube amp is pretty much required. I can see my solder joints here and the plastic where it goes up into the plastic, and basically just, man, I would have done that totally differently if I were designing it. But I'm going to break out the new one and compare. Alright, so here's the new one. I actually have two of them. If this goes any kind of easy, then I'm going to do both. But I'm only going to work on the input one first in case I mess that up and can't fix it. At least I still have input 2. It's a lower power, but I can get by. Also, if I mess up this, I have a second one to try with. But it's got these 4. I thought it was 6, but it turns out it's actually 4. Solder joints. I got a desoldering iron and a soldering iron. And I don't have a fancy hot cold station. I have some old ass soldering iron stuff from my office. So we're going to really hope that this works. First of all, I'm going to be putting the desoldering iron on these little points back here, and I'm going to attempt to work this out without damaging anything. And I don't know if you can really see with the camera. I can see it with my eyes, but both of these they just got nothing but gunk down in there. I might actually pull it apart after I get one off, just so I can show you how much nastiness it got up in there. And you can kind of see they're a little brownish faded, just they look old and crudted up. Whereas these over here, because I never use these are the that's the aux, what is it, the preamp out, the power amp in, and the other one's a for the foot switch. And I don't use any of these three ever. Actually, the only reason the one on the left is missing the little metal ring is because I stole it and put it in there. But yeah, it's that's what they pretty much look like when they don't get used forever and ever and ever. So we're gonna see what we can do about that, and I will show you what I got when I get it. All right. So I was able to desolder that. It kind of looks a little filthy, and I don't know if that's a problem or not, but we're gonna find out. I don't think it is. I see the brown residue on the other input jack. I don't see it on anything else. So I'm going to just assume that that's some surface gunk, and I don't know why they put it there, but this was the piece I just desoldered. I want to take it apart and see what it looks like on the inside, because it is nasty. So here we go. Just looks gunky. That back copper thing that terminates when you plug in the 1/4-inch audio jack from your guitar cable. Yeah, that just looks disgusting. That looks so nasty. Years of gunk. I'm gonna pull that copper piece out so you can see it better. See, that's the underside of it. That's what the tip of my guitar cable should be touching, but what it actually was touching is that. I mean, that is just ugh. Alright, so it was actually a lot easier than I thought it would be. Not to say that it was super easy, but I thought it was going to be a lot more difficult, so I went ahead and replaced both of them. And we're going to cross our fingers on that, I guess, but you can see my new solder joints. Now, contrary to the rest of the solder joints you can see on the board, these had some kind of brownish orange substance over the original solder joints, and when I desoldered them, of course, they gunked up and got everywhere. I'm not sure what they're for. I would expect that it would be to protect the solder joints, or I don't know, to keep amateurs like me from wanting to do this too often. Other than that, I don't know. It's an oddity, honestly. But we're gonna hope that that works. I do see where some of my solder is crossing some of these little electric track areas in the board, and I'm hoping that that's not going to become an issue. If it is, I'll just have to get back in here and redo some of the soldering, but for the most part, I think that's pretty much it. I'm going to put it back together. I'm going to take this opportunity to clean this guy too while I'm at it, and I'll put her back on the video when I know what's going on. for those of you who are wondering how I was doing those fancy little tricks, this is my pedal board setup. It is nothing fancy. In fact, most guys that are really serious about their pedal boards would probably come and find me and hit me and call me names and tell me I'm dumb and make fun of my silly pedal board. But I like it. It works fine. It could be better. Up on the top left, that fuel tank, that's the power supply, so I don't have to blow money on batteries. It powers all the pedals. Directly to the right is actually the last pedal on the chain. That's the tuner. You tap it, and it will actually bypass the sound, so I can tune it, and it won't, nobody has to hear me tuning like a noob. I do tune a lot, though. I don't know what it's picking up right now, honestly, because I don't have anything plugged into it, but that's that one. This is the next pedal on the chain, but I'm going to come back to that. That's super chorus. It's exactly what it sounds like when it's time to play the chorus. I hit it, and it just gives it a little more, I don't know how to describe the sound, almost like a reverb, but it's just, it dulls up the sound of the guitar just a little bit, makes it sound like a chorus section. That's the Ibanez Turbo Tube Screamer. I have a regular TS1 Tube Screamer. I like it too, but this one gives me a few more options, especially the mode setting. It generally stays in TS1 setting, so it's mimicking a TS1 right now, a regular Tube Screamer. But I think that when I'm playing certain places where it's going to sound muddy no matter what, I'll go ahead and crank it. It's got 4 settings, but the higher settings, you bring out the highs, really, I think, more. They make it a little more bright, and it pushes a little hotter. And it almost sounds like it's trying to make your guitar sound like a Gibson, sort of. But it works for certain venues where any kind of low end is going to sound muffly no matter what you do with your amp EQ. It's generally in the TS1 setting, like I said, and I try to put it right up just above breakup level, or try to mimic what the amp would be just above breakup level, because if I turn my amp up that hot, it's usually a problem for other people on stage. So I keep my amp kind of just at wake up level for the tubes, which is about 3 to 3.5 on the volume knob. There, you can see they go to 12. I put it on 3, any higher than that, and it breaks up about 4. Sounds really awesome, but it also usually drowns out the bass or the other guitar. So unless I'm playing a bigger spot or I'm playing outside, in which case I take full advantage and I will crank that sucker up. I've never had it above 5. It's so loud. The OCD is, I guess, my main overdrive. I will tone stack it with that to play lead too, because I have a single coil pickup in my guitar. Both of my pickups are single coils, no humbuckers. That's coming. I'll make another video for that. I've also never done that to a Telecaster, so that'll be interesting. I've already opened it. It is cut for a humbucker, dual coil, but yeah, to be continued. But for now, we tone stack instead of have a humbucker. And believe me, I know it sounds nothing like a humbucker, but it does give me the sustain that I need to play your older rock and roll licks and some of your more modern rock and roll licks. And that's a Microamp Plus. MXR makes the original Microamp, which is just one knob, and it's just a clean boost. When I'm playing both of these together, I still like to be able to play each one separately, just this one or just this one, so I don't have their volume kicked up anymore than the amp's clean setting. So that just having this on and then kicking this to play a lead doesn't really get me out front. So put this on, it's a clean boost. It just basically raises the volume, and I can dial in highs or lows if I need to do that, but it just gets it just a little bit above the rest of the band so that you can be sure to hear what the guitar is doing on a climactic part of the song. Now this guy, I very rarely use him at gigs. This is more for like practice. This is what I was using a second ago when I was testing the amp out. It's a looper station. It's actually more than a looper station. It does a lot of stuff, but it's generally intended to be used as a looper station. You record a loop into it by pressing the pedal to record, and when you're ready to stop, you hit this foot switch that I have connected to it, and then you hit it again and it starts playing whatever it was you were just playing, and it'll repeat the loop. So timing is essential here, right? And then you can play a lead lick over it. I've been using it at acoustic gigs when I'm the only guitar player. That's probably not going to be filmed. I'm still learning how to get the timing just right on it. It's a little embarrassing when you get it wrong. But the other thing it can do is you can record entire tracks. It's got an aux in for a powered amp, so you can actually run the entire band's PA through it. So if you have everybody mic'd, then you can record the entire gig into that pedal, and then it's got a USB connection to download from. I mean, it'll break up into tracks. It'll do. It's got a rhythm section in it, so you can actually, if you don't have drums, for example, and you're like me and your tempo is less than pristine, you can actually tap it tempo in. I don't have it plugged in right now, but it's got the metronome effect, so it blinks with the drum sounds that it makes. So I can tap the time in. So if it's a 1E and a 2E and a 1E and a 2E, I can 1E and a 2E. And it would, of course, the track needs to be clear first. So 1E and a 2E. And you can see that it's playing, the blinking light is blinking anytime you would hear the drum beat if I had it plugged in. You could speed that up, 1E and 2E. And there it goes, or you slow it down, 1E and a 2E. And then when you're done, you just stop and clear it. And I think it just keeps blinking anyway. Who cares? Of course, the wah pedal, that's got specific uses. I'm not one of those guitar players that can't wait to step on a wah pedal. I hate it. It ruins the tone, totally skags up everything. But there are some songs that you really can't get away without, it's just, it does work for like, I'm brain farting on songs. Let's Get It On. We do that. Anything by Jimi Hendrix. Can't really, do that without a wah pedal. It's a crybaby. Actually, it's got a really, really tight sweep. So it's sensitive, and I need to widen it out a little bit. I think you can adjust these, but I've never done it. But hey, I never fixed an input jack before either, and that seems to have worked out really well. Actually, cleaning it too. I noticed there was some ozone built up around some of the connections to some of the capacitors in there. I cleaned it off, and I'm not joking. I'm dead serious. That light, that red light for the amp, it's not an LED, it's a traditional light bulb. That sucker is like 3 times as bright as it was before. It had been getting dimmer and dimmer. I didn't even clean around it on the inside, but I cleaned up all the ozone that I could find on all the components. There's a good bit. And that sucker just looks gorgeous now. Like, it was nowhere near that bright. It was bright enough to know it was on, but I mean, just see, great example of cleaning the inside of your amp can do a lot more than you'd think. But basically, I'm going to sign off, and that's pretty much my rig, my stage rig. And you saw the telly, the ash telly, swamp ash. And it's got a natural finish. And I picked that up for about $1,200. And I think I'm ready to throw some humbuckers in it. So I think we'll have another video here soon. And you pros out there can laugh and wail at my ridiculous methods of figuring out how to do that. But hey, I mean, it'll still work at the end. So whatever.